lot of emotional ups and downs. As I said earlier, I have begun the process of recovery, so to speak, just trying to feel better about myself.
You're very talented, obviously. You're a beautiful woman. You have a lot going for you. What would be the downside, or the part you said that, the good and the bad, if I can ask you the bad part?
Well, it's very lonely. Being a woman in this industry, in my opinion, is extremely lonely. If Clive Davis, if his plan was to destroy my career, it didn't work.
Hey friend, welcome to my channel, Karina Ludo. Please be sure to like, subscribe. Please be sure to turn on your notification bell so you can always know when I post a new upload. Now let's get into this video. Today we are talking about the iconic and very sultry Phyllis Hyman. Phyllis Hyman isn't a name familiar to many. The overriding sense is that hers is a missed opportunity. She could have been as big as Whitney, a rival to Anita Baker, while Nancy Wilson said she had a voice which was comparable with Sarah Vaughan. Yet she languishes in the cult soul company of many Black women of the late 70s through the 90s who never quite had the success their talent deserved. A commanding physical presence and riveting stage performer, Hyman was a tragic figure beset by personal troubles. She nevertheless left behind a legacy of deeply felt recordings and unforgettable live performances. And can we all just agree she is just stunning, drop-dead gorgeous. She had the most beautiful lips. I love her lip shape. Hyman's lyrics are known for the pain they held. She was a haunted soul who could not seem to make a man stay, and she had to deal with many demons, including weight gain, loneliness, and bipolar disorder. She turned to substance and alcohol to cope at some point, and it led to the deadly spiral that claimed her life. She was known among a few as a, S advocate, meaning she promoted for people to not take their own lives and to fight for a reason to live. But it totally shocked her fans when news of her own death went public. Now let's get into her childhood. The eldest of 7 children, Hyman was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on July 6, 1949, to Philip, a World War II veteran, and Louise Hyman, a waitress at a local nightclub, and grew up in St. Clair Village, the South Hill section of Pittsburgh. After leaving Pittsburgh, her music training started at a music school. An elementary school teacher noticed and nurtured her vocal talent and aimed at first towards a solid career as a legal secretary, attending the Robert Morris Business College. She took up singing naturally, won a scholarship to music school, and began her professional career in 1971. She had also trained as a legal secretary in case her singing career didn't take off. A 6'1" beauty, Hyman made her way to New York in her early 20s, dreaming of a career in the entertainment industry. Almost immediately, she began to find work, at least intermittently, as a vocalist, and by 1974, she had formed her own band, Phyllis Hyman and the PH Factor. By the next year, she had become a fixture of New York's stylish Upper West Side, making regular appearances at 2 clubs a few blocks apart. Russ Brown's and Mikkel's influential figures in the Black music industry circulated through these clubs, and Hyman in 1976 attracted the attention of percussionist and producer Norman Connors, who gave her a shot at a wider exposure, a featured performer slot on his album, You Are My Starship. The album included Hyman's hit remake of stylistic ballads Betcha by Golly Wow, which dented R&B charts and helped Hyman make the acquaintance of the song co-composer Linda Creed. Hyman was signed to the Arista label in 1977 and released the album Phyllis Hyman. Arista specialized in sophisticated Black vocal music with a hint of jazz, the lifeblood of the emerging Quiet Storm format that had gotten its start at the radio station of the premier Black educational institution, Howard. She had been signed to Arista under the request of mogul Clive Davis, whom she called a plantation owner to his face. So she did not play. She really stood by her beliefs, okay? But conflict with him changed things for her. She felt she intimidated men too, and had a respectable standard one had to beat to catch her attention. He had wanted her to adopt bubblegum pop in lieu of her soulful performances, and she had denied it. By 1983, the label dropped her, and her career lost its momentum.
My next guest has nurtured such superstars as Barry Manilow, Melissa Manchester, Chicago, Simon and Garfunkel, Clive Davis. Clive Davis, probably the most knowledgeable man the record business has ever known, the president of Arista, Clive Davis.
By 1978, Arista acquired Buddha Records and subsequently signed Phyllis to the label, which included a $50,000 advance. Clive was a fan of Phyllis. He knew she had all the right ingredients to become a star, and he was a star maker. But Phyllis, on the other hand, wasn't happy with the signing. Buddha was a small label, and she had control there. At a label like Arista, with its big distribution and the commandeering presence of Clive, she was losing the control she had at the previous label. But Clive wasn't happy, and since his flub with Aretha, Clive had desperately wanted a hit female R&B act. He wanted to get Phyllis back in the studio as soon as possible. But Clive didn't want Barry to produce for her again, even though their previous song worked. Instead, he delegated Manilow to work with Dionne Warwick, the label's newest artist. And while Barry only produced one song for Phyllis, Clive let him produce Dionne's entire album. Phyllis wanted to bring Quincy Jones in for production, but Clive said no. This would be an everlasting conflict between the two, as they both wanted power over Phyllis's career. But it seems as if the label didn't know what to do with her. Dionne already had her image carved out when she came to them, and thus Clive was able to set her up for success with the label. But Phyllis was something different. She wasn't quite R&B, but she wasn't quite jazz either. And Phyllis refused to go full pop, even though Clive had aspirations to. She was something unique altogether, and marketing departments and execs didn't know where to place her. And while some at the label wanted to put out more singles and market Phyllis's album accordingly, Clive seemed to be giving up. She refused to conform to his wants. And he thought she was difficult to work with. Phyllis thought he was intentionally misunderstanding what she wanted out of her career. He wanted to sell records while she wanted to have control of her own artistry. And sometimes those two things don't mix well. Phyllis and Clive were like oil and water. And although Phyllis had the makings of a superstar, something Clive clearly saw in her, she refused to bend to his will and do the things he thought would help her reach that success. Whether it was fear or rebellion, by the time her second album on Arista came out, Phyllis added coke to her cocktail of alcohol and pills. She allegedly told others that Larry introduced her to the drug to take her mind off the stress of the business.
Larry and Phyllis, not all the time, but there were some verbal battles because I would come to their house and I'd hear it. It wasn't an easy situation.
Around this time, she decided to terminate a pregnancy, deciding it wasn't the right time for motherhood. She never envisioned that life for herself anyways. The year was 1980, and Angela Bofill had just signed to Arista in an attempt to move into the mainstream. She and Phyllis were similar in nature. Both had a jazz sound and, in my opinion, looked like they could be distant cousins. The one thing that separated them, though, was the way they worked with Clive. Angela was cooperative with his demands, unlike Phyllis, who wanted control at every step. Clive took a liking to Angela, and in turn, she became the priority over Phyllis. This created tension between the two ladies, especially Phyllis, who was intentionally being overlooked for another artist. Angela gave Clive the leeway to be the puppet master of her time at Arista, but even though she was willing to work with him, she never saw the success both she and Clive were hoping for. Clive would get his R&B diva, though, sooner or later. However, it seems as if Phyllis always had someone on her arm, from her now ex-husband Larry to R&B crooner Christopher Williams.
Kareem Akbar. That's right, the educated brother from the bank. He's the real head of the CMB.
Yeah, that one. Phyllis was rarely without a partner. But having a man didn't mean Phyllis wasn't lonely. At this time, she was exhibiting signs of depression and addiction. She would stay out all night, sometimes even falling asleep in the middle of her performances. During this time, Phyllis was featured in many men's magazines. She graced the cover of Players multiple times and also posed. But once the pictures came out, Phyllis lost her endorsements and Clive decided to take a step away from her. This would send Phyllis into another spiral, and she started diving deeper into substance. Goddess of Love was released in May 1983 and peaked at number 20 on the R&B charts. Phyllis thanked Clive in the liner notes, stating he was right, as always. But by the time that the album came out to meager success, he was done with her. But that was all right with him. He found someone else who would take her place just fine.
She is Dionne's first cousin.
Right.
And, but if the mantle will ever pass, even though Lena's as great as ever and Dionne is as great as ever, but if the mantle is to pass to somebody who's 19, who's elegant, who's sensuous, who's innocent, who's got an incredible range of talent, but guts and soul at the same time, it will be Whitney Houston, in my opinion.
After Arista A&R Jerry Griffith convinced Clive to come watch her perform, Clive was enamored with this girl from New Jersey. She was beautiful, with the most electrifying voice he had ever heard. Whitney signed to Arista on April 10th, 1983, a month before Phyllis dropped her album. Phyllis continuously acted out against Clive, which only pushed him towards trying to create stars out of other artists. Although Phyllis had both the beauty and talent to become a megastar, she craved control and ownership over her life and career. And in her eyes, being a superstar allowed others to have the final say. Even still, Phyllis resented Clive for what she could have been. Whitney was collateral damage. At a big party for the label, the two came head to head.
They were both signed to Arista. There was some kind of big party for the Arista artists. Phyllis was there and was sitting in a stool, and then she said somebody brought her over to meet Phyllis. And Phyllis looked her up and down, like her up and down. And she said Phyllis got off the stool and walked around her. She said she sat down back at the stool. She said, "So you're the one." Now Whitney looked at Phyllis and she said, "Yes, I'm the one."
But by 1984, Goddess of Love and seemingly Phyllis had fizzled out. The label was all in on Whitney, and Phyllis knew the end was near for her at Arista. She was dropped from the label while still owing $429,000 in debt, still owing back label advances and other expenses.
Davis taught me to never be afraid because I was so terrorized by him. He sure taught me that if you try to terrorize me again, well, we can't say that on public radio. What I may do to someone who tries to hurt me again in this business, I'm not having it. I should be respected as I respect, and I will not have someone try to ruin my spirit and ruin my career. If Clive Davis, if his plan was to destroy my career, it didn't work.
A couple weeks after Living All Alone was released, Whitney Houston won an MTV VMA for Best Female Video. Whitney's debut album had taken the industry by storm, and Phyllis watched with disdain. Everything Clive and Arista had tried to force out of her had now manifested into a career for someone else. But in order to do that, Whitney had to relinquish control, mitigate her own wants to craft the perfect image, be the perfect pop star. And that is something Phyllis was not willing to do. Living All Alone failed to make it to the top 10, much to Phyllis's chagrin. As much as she hated to admit it, she wanted a hit record.
The survivor. She understands the record business and how to set and follow trends. She demonstrates that ability on her new album, Prime of My Life, and its hit single, Don't Want to Change the World.
Phyllis's next album was titled accurately. Prime of My Life was released in June 1991. The album gave Phyllis her first #1 R&B single, Don't Want to Change the World. The second single, Living in Confusion, peaked at number 9. Phyllis toured and made appearances on television for the next couple of years, but her behavior was becoming more and more unusual as the years went on. She was asked to perform at Ella Fitzgerald's 75th birthday celebration and to sing in front of her idol Nancy Wilson, who was also a guest at the show. However, Phyllis showed up to the performance high. She was obviously inebriated and didn't know the song she was supposed to sing. Like with most of the opportunities in her life, her fear and self-sabotaging tendencies got the best of her.
Part of this industry it's everything. I don't think as much energy or consideration is placed on the music or the artist's persona and personality as is put on the business end of things. I mean, if an artist isn't astutely aware of the business angles, they're in trouble. If you can't read your contracts, if you don't have proper management and proper legal advice, you're in real trouble. And I stress to anyone getting into this industry to read this business of music, which is what we call a music Bible, to attend any music seminars one can, to talk to everyone in the industry possible. Learn as much as you can, because having talent is only a small portion of what this industry is all about. It's called the music business, and believe me, the emphasis is on the word business.
By the time of her next album, other key issues were beginning to influence Hyman in ways which would continue to plague her through the course of the rest of her life, namely bipolar disorder. This manifested itself in crippling self-doubt about both her image, she was 6'1", and abilities, leading to bouts of depression, all of which she self-medicated. In the late 1970s, Hyman married her manager Larry Alexander, the brother of Jamaican pianist and melodica player Monty Alexander, but both the personal and professional associations ended in divorce. Around this time, Hyman began using Coca-Cola, if you guys know what I mean, for which she helped develop a lifelong codependency. Hyman had been very passionate about her career, even to the extent of expecting other singers to match or beat her standards, but she also had an obsession with love, a concept that eluded her most of her life. With her statuesque figure, gorgeous looks, and famous face, Hyman would most likely have had any man she wanted, but for some reason, true love always seemed to just be out of reach. For the rest of the singer's life, the search for a romantic partner would cause her emotional trouble. She told Jet magazine in 1981 that she hoped for a relationship. This is a direct quote from her. "I don't really want to say need, because to me, an aggressive, liberated woman, need sounds too pathetic. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe need and want sometimes go together. Maybe I do need and want a man." End quote.
What does that mean? You can't get a date? What it really means is that women in my industry, and I talk to a lot of singers about this, men don't really talk to us. Why? Don't ask me. Guys, why don't you talk to us? Have I been married? Well, we don't want to discuss that. No, really. I've been married a long time ago, and he was a nice gentleman, and obviously didn't work out. Obviously, yeah. I mean, it like this cost me a lot of money. Did it? Did it? Now, do you want to be married? No. No, I shouldn't say that. What I would like is someone nice in my life. I would like to be able to go on one dates like a lot of the girls I know. I love children, but I'm told by men who are friendly with me that I'm intimidating. I'm over 6 feet tall. Yeah. I'm not a thin woman. I'm not afraid to show my figure. I'm not afraid to laugh and to have a lot of fun. I'm not very quiet. And it seems like guys like girls who are, "Hi, how are you?" So I know some guys who would think you're terrific. And I'm told by other women, executive women, that they have a hard time as well. I don't know if that's true or not, but I can testify to the fact that it is definitely not easy for me. Men do not ask me out. They think that I'm unapproachable, and I'm not. And you're not. I'm a great cook. I love being at home. I'm a Cancer. I was born July 6, 1949, and I'm a new 40. Well, you don't need many men in this business. We were talking about that earlier. Men don't come around backstage, and they do, but nothing I take home that means money. That's it. and I get my friends backstage, but when I go backstage to a Maze concert or the Whispers or any of those male groups, women by the droves. I mean, fiercely fine women. I always want to say, listen, girls, if you have a brother and he looks anything at all like you, send him over here when you guys are done. Because it's it. Yeah, I always felt bad for years that men just don't come around female performers. You don't get an opportunity to meet them. And that's pretty sad, which is why I've concentrated on my work, because I can't afford to get overly depressed about the lack of a permanent man in my life. I have somebody in my life that's my friend. He has helped me through a lot of my problems I've had in the last few years. He's been like a rock. He has not only been a great support system for me, but he's not one to just stroke me all the time. When my stuff is raggedy, he's the first one to walk. He's not one to argue. He's not an arguer. He just walks. He says, you know what? I can't be bothered with you right now. See you later. And he's the guy that says, I love you, but you're digga. You know, I won't fill in the blanks.
Till her death, she often talked about a Japanese man she had truly loved with all her being. But unfortunately, he had felt the same about her. And the thought had scared her so much, she started doing all she could to sabotage the relationship. It really scared her that this man was actually in love with her. He traveled to Japan at some point during their engagement to teach kids, and the distance only put her situation in perspective. She was falling in love. She made a mess of things and ended their engagement, but she realized her folly years later. Of course, it was too late, and all she could do was talk about the man that got away. She came alive on stage, often decked out in African-influenced attire. She liked big jacketed pantsuits and hats, particularly fezzes, that she wore angled to the side. She chatted up the audience, displaying a flair of performing that won her a 1981 Tony Award nomination for her role in Sophisticated Ladies on Broadway. It would always be a scream to see this statuesque, gorgeous woman up on the stage complaining about not having a man or talking badly about the current boyfriend, says Camille of her shows at Blues Alley. One time, this guy that she was fixed up with comes to the club all dapper with flowers, and I don't think she saw him come in. Well, she proceeded to trash the guy. Man, the poor guy, you could almost see the flowers wilt before your eyes. He left. End of the road. Hyman's first solo R&B top 10 hit came in 1981 with Can't We Fall in Love Again, a duet with Michael Henderson. The song was recorded while she was performing in the Broadway musical Sophisticated Ladies. The song Living All Alone featured a new Linda Creed composition entitled Old Friend, which increasingly often became part of Hyman's live show. The two women had long been good friends, and Creed's death in 1993 may have been one of the events that started Hyman on a downward spiral. Hyman began working on the album during an emotionally difficult period. In May 1993, within a period of 28 days, her mother, Louise Hyman, her grandmother, and a close friend all passed away. She was crying a lot, says Nick Martinelli, the Los Angeles-based producer who helped write the single I Refuse to Be Lonely and produced 4 other cuts on the album. Her mother had just died, and we wrote about what she was feeling at the time. She really felt alone. The ironic thing is that while she was trying to put this song together, she was saying, no, I'm not going to be that. I don't want to put any other negative thing out there. So that's how the song came out the way it did. End quote. She gained weight and was rumored to be battling substance and alcohol addictions. During her appearance on television's Arsenio Hall show, viewers were touched and saddened by her frank confession of loneliness and unhappiness. Hyman suffered from bipolar disorder and depression for years, having been diagnosed in the 1980s. She often self-medicated with alcohol and substance and frequently spoke about taking her own life. On the afternoon of June 30th, 1995, 6 days before her 46th birthday, Hyman died by taking her own life by overdosing on sleeping pills and vodka in the bedroom of her New York City apartment at 211 West 56th Street. She was found unconscious at 2 p.m. and died at 3:50 p.m. at St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital, now Mount Sinai West, hours before she was scheduled to perform at the Apollo Theater. She left a note behind before she took her own life, and it said, I'm tired. Those of you that I love know who you are. May God bless you. A memorial service was held at St. Peter's Lutheran Church in Manhattan.
Hit the music world today. R&B singer Phyllis Hyman was found dead in her apartment this afternoon. The 45-year-old Hyman was supposed to sing at the Apollo Theater tonight.
Music world lost somebody very important. Very important tonight.
How would you describe yourself as a woman trying to deal with life in the 80s? You said your album is a reflection of that single woman.
Well, I don't deal with it very well. I manage to produce and deliver. But personally, I haven't dealt with it very well. I've had a lot of emotional ups and downs. As I said earlier, I have begun the process of recovery, so to speak, you know, just trying to feel better about myself, regain my
Because you
confidence.
seem like the type of person that lives life from one extreme. There's no medium ground
Oh, no,
for
there
you.
isn't. I'm born under the sign of Cancer, and I have a Sagittarian moon and rising. If you know anything about the signs, that's called extreme highs and extreme lows, and there is no middle for me. It has to be something that has to be worked on. And I'm talking about worked on full time, and that's almost impossible in this sort of work. What I do is I run my own company, Command Performances, which consists of a production company, a music publishing firm, and a management firm. And the management company is somewhat inactive, except that I co-manage myself with two incredibly talented Black lawyers out of Philadelphia, two young ladies who I've known for many years. And I just can't let go. I can't say, here, girls, you got it. That's just not my nature. I have also been burned in the past, letting other people do that. Those who claim to have been the experts, and I got burned. And I'm skeptical. I'm trying to take away the word, I do not trust people. You know, that word it has a very negative connotation. And now I'm replacing it with skepticism, because that is, you know, maybe either or. And I'm skeptical. And I'm skeptical of most people I do business with. You know, I have that attitude, show me. No, don't ask me to trust you. Show me.
You're very talented, obviously. You're a beautiful woman. You have a lot going for you. What would be the downside, or the part you said that, you know, the good and the bad, if I can ask you the bad part?
Well, it's very lonely. Being a woman in this industry, in my opinion, is extremely lonely. It's rare that you have men hanging around backstage and at parties and at places where you might be the same way you have women around the men. I haven't even figured that out yet. I'm going to do a survey and ask the girls, why can they come out and be so aggressive with men, with the male performers, and yet the males don't act that way? There is no such thing as a male groupie. I mean, at least not one I would date. So that makes it pretty tough.
Because oftentimes, you know, people go, oh, Phyllis Hyman, she's just great. And they think you have it all. I mean, you know,
how I wish. No, it's not quite that simple. I do have many, many things, but I don't have a romantic personal life.
Okay.
Several of Phyllis Hyman's albums were released after her death. In November 1995, the album I Refuse to Be Lonely was released. The title is almost chilling, considering that she had taken her own life while she was in the process of compiling that album. Throughout the 1950s and 2000s, various albums and songs have been released, proving that her memory still lives on for both those who loved her and in the music industry. For her friends, the postmortem success has provided an ironic last word. Phyllis was uncovering the riddles of stuff in her life, says Glenda Gracia, Hyman's friend and manager for 14 years. She was in touch with her emotions. Sometimes when you start that process, the demons that you confront may have more for you than you might have thought you would find. I don't really think there was one element that caused Phyllis to leave us, continued Gracia. I think she didn't give herself enough credit to think that she had the strength to overcome the things that bothered her, like her weight, like she would never get her due. And the aggregate, she did not feel she could meet the challenges and get through. I used to tell her that the only way to get out was to go through, and I think she decided not to go through. End quote.
I've been watching you for years, and I've just always been struck by your confidence. So it's amazing to me to hear that you didn't always feel confident, that you were fearful. What did you fear?
The fear was of not being good enough, not being pretty enough, not being thin enough. I think a lot of girls go through that. I have just begun to put all of that aside. And I'm talking about just in the last year or two. Being with a record company that did not give me any attention started that ball rolling. And in most cases, these problems creep up because artists, unfortunately, are oftentimes concerned with being musically correct and having on the right clothes and the right makeup. And that's not enough. I stress learning the business backwards and forwards, being in control of what is going on in your life, being able to have people that you can trust.
I find that I like getting older. I like the wrinkles. I like sometimes the extra dimples that you have. You know, I like that. You know, I'm not a workout queen. I'm not into the gym. I'm not into being skinny. I mean, it would be nice to be thin if that were the case, but if not, I would have to work at it extensively. And guess what? I'm not going to do it. Yeah. I'm starting to get real fond of you. That's real hot. I'm not doing it because it would mess up my vibe. Yeah. It's not what I want to do. You really are at a good place right now, aren't you? I'm at an excellent place. I'm also in a good industry because at least the position that I'm in, I'm a singer. And I will tell people in a minute, you're here to hear my voice. I don't have to show my body to make a living. Thank God I'd be a poor child.
She had been spending larger amounts of time at her small apartment in Midtown Manhattan before her death, as well as at a second apartment near downtown Philadelphia. Her favorite activities were watching television, Martin, Living Single, and music specials. Talking on the telephone and also eating were two of her favorite things to do. Urged on by friends who'd seen her go from model thin during her sophisticated ladies' days to a point of obesity that bloated her face, she went through personal trainers like other people go through pencils, Gracia says. She loved to cook and took pride in inviting over friends to taste her latest creations, says her brother Michael Hyman. She could make a nice dish of spaghetti. Despite everything that she had, he said, she didn't seem to be happy with her life. And that just goes to show you that if you're depressed, it doesn't matter what you're doing or what you have. Though Hyman often complained of loneliness, friends say she could be lonely with or without a boyfriend because a lot of people speculated she took her life because of her lack of a love life, but that's not the case. 5 days before she took her own life, she returned from visiting her boyfriend in Texas. 2 days before her death, according to Jet magazine, she telephoned a former boyfriend in Chicago telling him of her plans to take her own life. In September 2007, an authorized biography was released entitled Strength of a Woman, The Phyllis Hyman Story. The book is written by Jason A. Michael in cooperation with the estate of Phyllis Hyman. The book mentions Hyman's relationship with both men and one woman, which many speculated was her best friend that passed away that led her to spiral. Hyman's depression is telling, and that the male-centered recording industry has rarely dealt with how gender impacts how artists are perceived, or with the way various artists choose to deal with the pressures of celebrity and the constant need to please fans, producers, and A&R folks. The things that Phyllis takes a look at in her music are empowerment of the self, healing of the self, commitment in relationships, the importance of unconditional love and hope, says Gracia. What was important for her was to know that people loved her unconditionally and that commitments were kept. She was deeply disappointed when people would break their promises. Even though she was clearly a mature woman, she had the faith of an innocent child. If you told her you were going to do something and you didn't, it hurt her like a 6-year-old. Women artists are also forced to conform to some perceived notion of beauty. More than 6 feet tall, Hyman also battled her weight, often ballooning close to 300 pounds. Though folks remember Dina Washington dying of a drug overdose, a few remember that she overdosed on diet pills, an addiction directly related to her feelings that her body wasn't the right size. More often than not, women in the industry who struggle with these issues are described as difficult, as was the case with Hyman or even Mary J. Blige during her earlier moments in her career. While these women may indeed have been difficult, folks in the industry rarely ask why, or more specifically, how their experiences in a decidedly patriarchal and often sexist industry may have informed their personalities. Phyllis was very disenchanted and disillusioned about what she felt was not meritorious attention, Gracia says. She was angry that because she was a maturing artist and not singing popular or urban formats music, she could not realize the same professional success that other younger women were enjoying. She would say, "I think my vocal quality is better than theirs." She would be agitated in not having a sense of popularity and not being honored for who she was as an artist. She was so grossly hard on herself, Gracia says, that sometimes when I called to tell her about projects, she would say, "Why are they calling me? Why don't they call someone else?" I would just say to her, "Because they love you and your voice. They want you." She would say, "Really? Are you sure?" This is unfortunately all that we have for this video. I love Phyllis Hyman. It's very unfortunate that she did not get her flowers while she was alive, but it's never too late, right? I love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time.